Good evening and welcome to Business 7. South Africans today head to the polls in what observers deem might be the most important election in 3 decades. The election not only important to South Africa but also the Southern African region as a whole and Namibia specifically. We spoke to an expert of Oxford Economics Africa. Stay tuned for his insights.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
This morning, we had a Zoom interview with Louw Nel. He is the senior political analyst of Oxford Economics Africa, and it was specifically on the South African election and the impact it might have on the region. But before we join Louw Nel, let's take a look at a montage of photos capturing the vibe in South Africa running up to the election as compiled by Reuters.
We are all seeking connection to each other, to the world, to the spaces we exist in.
Seems like poor sportsmanship right now from the lads.
1.85 for the national record.
Here's another chance, and it is a goal from Vindo Kahan.
Hij zegt, ja, is er aan neertrekken. Hij bal ligt mij grond gepakt. Ja, hij heeft grond gepakt. En dan zien we
running that mountain up. Okay, so we will be doing this. More advanced, slightly advanced.
So is jou trolley reg? Want
I love that. I love that. So then
Kickstart our countdown at number 5 with this one.
Op Netwerk TV se Klets Kompas gesels ons nuus van 'n Maandag tot Donderdag. Ons kyk ook na die weer en meer. Stories wat jou raak en stories wat saak maak.
They've made a mistake in denying me bail, and they've made several other mistakes in many other cases.
The channels that teach us something new or reflect our expression. So it goes beyond switching to the right station. It's about choosing the experience that can adorn the present, dressing it with our tastes as we expand our preferences, because what we are actually connecting to is boundless, limitless human energy, and this is the spirit of NTV.
we're speaking to Louw Nel. He is the senior political analyst of Oxford Economics in Africa. Good morning, Louw. Thank you very much for joining us. From which city in South Africa?
Morning, Joe Marie. I'm in Cape Town. That's where we're based.
Very nice to have you in the BIS 7 studio, especially since you also have strong Namibian roots. We always welcome, we're always happy to welcome a fellow Namibian in the studio. Louw, this is an extremely important election for South Africa. What is the mood like in the country this morning?
Well, I think that elections in South Africa generally generate a lot of excitement. Because there is so much noise and so much campaigning, and people who do have political affiliations, they do feel quite strongly about the elections. So even myself, on Saturday, I was at a birthday party, and the host used his speech opportunity to stump for one of those political parties. So people do feel quite strongly. The perception is, and the feeling is, that this is a monumentous election in the sense that change is in the air. It's pretty much accepted that the ANC is on the brink of losing its majority, which of course would be the first time that's happened in its 30-year reign. And I guess there's also a certain amount of uncertainty. So for a party that has been in party uninterrupted for 30 years, the prospect of suddenly them being out of power and perhaps someone else being in charge does create a certain apprehension. There's some tension in the air as well. There are some political parties who have been campaigning quite negatively. Some political parties have been really appealing to people's worst instincts. So even the main opposition has been running a campaign, a very fear-mongering campaign. And I'm sure perhaps you guys have also seen the news about the response to their television ad of the South African flag burning and then warning of this doomsday scenario. Not positive campaigning at all. But then we have other parties down here in the Cape. The Patriotic Alliance is running a campaign that's very much focused on immigration. So also quite negative and a bit sour, to be honest. And then, of course, there's the new player, the Umkhonto we Sizwe party, the MK party. And they're certainly stirring things up. But I think that tensions are probably highest in KwaZulu-Natal, the home base for former President Jacob Zuma. And that's also the part of the country where we've seen enormous security force deployment in anticipation of potential trouble. And we saw some over the weekend already. So I think that the state is alive to the fact that even though South Africa doesn't have a recent history of violent elections, this might be the election to change that. And they're taking nothing for granted. In 2021, they probably did. And we saw what happened in KwaZulu-Natal with the civil unrest. This time, I think they're being much more proactive and just trying to head trouble off at the pass.
Louw, observers and analysts are saying that this is the most important election since the abolishment of the apartheid regime. Do you agree with that, and why?
I think, yes, it is the most important election since 1994 because for the first time in 30 years, the outcome isn't known, isn't certain. The ANC have been declining in support for 3 election cycles now, but they've never dipped below 50. They've never really even come close to 50. They had 57% of the vote in 2019, which it was tracking in the wrong direction, of course, but there's still a pretty healthy majority. And of course, that party peaked at nearly 70% 3 election cycles before that. So the ANC had always had this air of invincibility around them. You know, you could pretty much be guaranteed that they would win by hook or by crook. And this time, the prospect of them losing that majority, of course, is enormously significant. We at Oxford Economics Africa ran a number of scenarios ahead of the election, looking at what the potential outcome could be and what that government might look like. And in 3 of those 4 scenarios, we see the ANC still being in government, but having to do so with the coalition government. Our baseline scenario, our most likely outcome, is that the ANC achieves just enough for them to be able to form a government with smaller opposition parties. That's if they achieve between 46 and 50% of the vote, they'll be able to cobble together a coalition of small parties in order to still govern. And because those small parties won't have an awful lot of negotiating power, that's very much a continuity scenario. And so it'll be, for all intents and purposes, it'll still be an ANC government. But anything below that, if they were to go into government with either the Liberal Democratic Alliance or with the leftists, the populist economic freedom fighters, that would be a massive paradigm shift. those parties would not agree to go into a coalition with the ANC without significant concessions and without the belief that they can impact policy and force the ANC, in the DA's case, to veer closer to the center. And in the EFF's case, they would like the ANC to veer wildly to the left, of course, and to do some rather extreme policies. That's a very significant shift indeed. But in many ways, the 2024 election is perhaps not quite as significant as the 2029 elections, because I feel that perhaps the change that a lot of people are talking about, it might not come in this election, it might come in the next one. But this election is the election where the ANC loses its sense of invincibility, when the ANC perhaps enters into a period of terminal decline.
Louw, South Africa being the powerhouse in Southern Africa, so surely there are major significance to the outcome of this election. What could the possible factors be that would influence the region?
Well, I mean, Namibia is an example of one of our neighboring countries that's so interconnected to our own economy that a downturn in the South African economy would certainly affect Namibia. The reality is that Namibia has been stuck in this low growth cycle for a very long time. And it's difficult sometimes to see what is going to shake the country out of this low growth cycle. At the moment, the economic growth is below the population growth. And so, as they would say in Afrikaans, ons boer agteruit. The reality is that if the ANC continues in government, and they continue along their current sort of policy inertia, and perhaps also some of the foreign policy decisions that we've seen in recent times, there really is no expectation that the economy is going to suddenly start growing. If they partner with the EFF, one can imagine the markets would be quite alarmed, and the long-term implications of that, even though our modeling shows it's not nearly as dramatic as the other opposition parties might have you believe, it is the least positive outcome of all the scenarios that we've modeled. The scenario with the DA sees the DA forcing the ANC to abandon some of its more statist impulses. And so there could be a positive reaction from the markets. There could be some liberalization in the short and medium term that'll see investors maybe return to South African investors that have lost faith in the ANC government. And of course, the DA-led government, the multi-party charter, the liberal opposition, if they were to be in government, then one can imagine there would be a lot of enthusiasm from investors, thinking that there would be opportunities as state-owned enterprises are perhaps privatized, things of that nature. So as things stand, if the continuity model plays out, there's little reason to believe that the economy is going to be turning around anytime soon, which is bad news for South Africans, bad news for our neighbors as well, I would suggest. On the foreign policy side, the significance of the ANC being in government is perhaps most significant for Zimbabwe, where the ZANU-PF regime depends quite a lot on South Africa supporting it. Other countries like Eswatini, who has a rather unpopular monarch running the country, one of the reasons why his resistance to democratization in that country has been successful is because South Africa pretty much underwrites his regime. So there could be significant impact there. With Namibia, you have your elections as well. And so a lot of questions about whether or not SWAPO, in fact, is going to retain its hegemony. The ANC and SWAPO have got a long history. They've worked closely together. But I would think that whichever government comes into power in South Africa would be able to work successfully with whatever government comes into power in Namibia. The countries have such excellent relations. And I don't think that there's anything that would change that necessarily. But of course, the SWAPO ANC historic relationship provides a much more predictable environment and allows us to have a much better idea of what to expect from the next 5 years at the very least. Anything changes here, anything changes on north of the Orange River, there's some question marks. But I think that all things equal, it seems at this point in time, and it's a funny day to be saying it, but it seems like more of the same, really, at least for the foreseeable future.
Louw, thank you very much for your time. No doubt a very busy day ahead of you, not just in a personal capacity, but everybody wants your insights. So we appreciate the time you took out for Business 7. Goodbye. Let me quickly show you something. Don't worry. Next time, I check nice.
Thanks, but it's okay. FNB Insurance checks nicer.
At FNB Insurance, we provide cover for all your valuables, from your phone to your laptop to your car. FNB Insurance. You value it, we cover it. T's and C's apply.
Socio-economic issues are very important in the South African election. Reuters headed to the hometown of Nelson Mandela and compiled this report.
In Nelson Mandela's hometown, Louw, there's been no running water since 2016. Jobs are scarce and crime is on the rise. It's been 30 years since Mandela led the African National Congress to power. In rural locations like this, cracks are now showing in the ANC's support. Among those too young to remember Mandela and the ANC's battle to end apartheid. Among older voters, however, like 65-year-old Mzwandile Mthembu, loyalty remains strong. He has no power in his concrete shack, but gets a pensioner's grant.
It doesn't mean we should abandon them, because if we vote for someone else, they can also do the same. That is why I will vote for the ANC until I die.
The ANC won at 63% in this province, Eastern Cape, in 2021. But that support is being challenged by a generational divide. Across the road from Mthembu, 37-year-old Lungile Nqoswa says he's had enough of the old guard and would be voting for the opposition.
Mandela is gone now. Now it's our time. We must see things differently.
The challenges in Louw are echoed across South Africa. Unemployment is near a record high. Murders are rising, and basic services such as electricity are unreliable. Polls and political analysts are predicting that widespread dissatisfaction will cost the ANC its majority for the first time since 1994, and force it into a coalition. Some opinion polls have put overall ANC support as low as 39%. However, it is still on track to get twice the votes of any other party on May 29th. Recent surveys have also shown the party regaining some ground. The ANC says it needs more time to finish the job, but it acknowledges that there have also been mistakes in the 3 decades since Mandela came to power on a wave of hope.
Every day, you make choices that make you legendary. Journey together with us on the path to securing your legacy as a member of the League of Legends. With the Select Platinum Bundle Fee Premium Bank offering, you will access tools that will enable you to thrive. If you earn 850,000 Namibian dollars per annum or more, you can apply for this offering today via bankvinted.com.na for only 447 Namibian dollars per month. Bank Vinted, a member of Capricorn Group.
Meet Christine, an office snacker with a craving for treats, but a budget to stick to. Fortunately, the Synergy chatbot has her covered. With just a few taps, Christine can find the latest specials on snacks, satisfying her cravings without breaking the bank. And then there's Brian, who's out on a date with the most beautiful girl in Winter. But even romance can't distract Brian from his love of sports updates. Luckily, the Synergy chatbot keeps him in the loop so he can stay connected while enjoying his evening. Finally, there's Henriette, who loves to stay informed with the latest news. Unlike other boomers, Henriette knows that she can conveniently access daily newspapers via the Synergy chatbot. Whether it's snacks, sports, or news, the Synergy chatbot has something for everyone.
That's it for Business 7 for this week. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week. We're playing out with the business highlights in Africa over the past week as compiled by Reuters. Goodbye.
Here's what's been making the business headlines in sub-Saharan Africa this week. Kenya's President William Ruto was hosted by US President Joe Biden in Washington, where the leaders announced new US-backed investments in green energy and health manufacturing. They also presented a detailed plan to cut Kenya's high debt load, much of which is owed to China.
And to the enduring bonds of friendship, partnership, and solidarity between Kenya and the United States.
Staying with Kenya, Microsoft is partnering with UAE-based AI firm G42 to invest $1 billion in a data center in the country, the company said on Wednesday. That's as a part of Microsoft's efforts to expand cloud computing services in East Africa. Ghana has agreed a memorandum of understanding with its bilateral creditors, including China and France, to restructure $5.4 billion of debt, two government sources said on Friday. That paves the way for the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund to approve the disbursement of $360 million under Ghana's $3 billion three-year bailout program, 1.5 years after the West African country defaulted. A Nigerian court has adjourned a money laundering trial against cryptocurrency exchange Binance and two of its executives because one of the defendants was not well enough to stand trial. All the defendants have pleaded not guilty. Nigeria blamed Binance for its currency woes. That's after cryptocurrency websites became the platforms of choice for trading the naira, as the country grappled with chronic dollar shortages and the currency fell to a record low. And finally, shares in BHP Group fell 3% on Thursday, a day after smaller rival Anglo American rejected a third takeover proposal. The offer remained conditional on London-listed Anglo unbundling its platinum and iron ore assets in South Africa. The Australian miner now has until May 29th to make a binding offer for Anglo, or be forced to walk away for 6 months under UK takeover rules. That deadline coincides with general elections in South Africa, where Anglo was formed and is still of significant national importance.
Meet Christine, an office snacker with a craving for treats, but a budget to stick to. Fortunately, the Synergy chatbot has her covered. With just a few taps, Christine can find the latest specials on snacks, satisfying her cravings without breaking the bank. And then there's Brian, who's out on a date with the most beautiful girl in Winter. But even romance can't distract Brian from his love of sports updates. Luckily, the Synergy chatbot keeps him in the loop so he can stay connected while enjoying his evening. Finally, there's Henriette, who loves to stay informed with the latest news. Unlike other boomers, Henriette knows that she can conveniently access daily newspapers via the Synergy chatbot. Whether it's snacks, sports, or news, the Synergy chatbot has something for everyone.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.